both our lives has been destroyed.
It's a dark chapter in our shared history that until now has been hidden.
I was abducted and my baby boy was kidnapped.
Single mothers and their newborn babies were deported from England to Ireland simply because they were unmarried.
If you are removed from one state, from one country to another, against your will, that is trafficking.
Journeys organised and paid for by the state and the Catholic Church.
They wanted to save the soul of the Catholic children.
Those children, some British citizens, were then adopted under a secretive regime in Ireland.
There's a certain amount of playing God here, remember, because you are creating families.
Come here, girl.
In 1973, Terri Harrison was 18, pregnant and unmarried, the ultimate disgrace in Catholic Ireland. She fled to London to live with her aunt and remembers the day she came home to find a priest waiting for her.
It was a day of horror. He kept saying, no, you don't understand. You've committed a crime. And you have to leave this country. You have to go home.
What crime could you have possibly have committed?
I had sex outside of marriage. I was like a terrorist, a drug pusher, whatever name you want, label you need to put on me.
What happened next still haunts her to this day.
I was no match for this man. And he just threw me into the car, like literally pushed me down into the car, into the back seat. I started to become invisible.
Terri was sent to a notorious institution for unmarried mothers in Southern Ireland, stripped of her own name and given a number. Her baby boy was later taken.
I was processed. Tracy 1735. That's it. Sarah, we weren't human anymore. Our lives were destroyed through the fact between two countries. I was abducted, taken against my will out of one country, be brought back to this one. And number two, my son was sleeping peacefully in his cot when a stranger in a black habit took him, stripped him bare, left all his clothes at the end of it, and walked out of that institution. That's kidnapping.
This photo is all Terri had left of her son, positioned proudly in her living room in full view. Terri had travelled to Britain to avoid the brutal institutions in Ireland. In fact, between 1930 and the late 1970s, the number of women making similar journeys was so high, officials in London started calling them PFIs, pregnant from Ireland. The British authorities began to see them as a burden on the taxpayer, while the Catholic Church in Ireland didn't want children growing up in non-Catholic families. And so the repatriation scheme began.
What wording would you use to describe what happened?
I would use it as trafficking. I mean, if you are removed from one state, from one country to another, against your will, that is trafficking. That's how we would describe it now.
Patricia Carey is the special advocate for survivors. Her role is to amplify their voices and make sure the government listens.
Many of them didn't want to give their children up. Many of them talk about being forced to sign adoption papers. Many of them talk about not knowing what documents they were signing. And because they were trafficked from one country to the other, we have the added complication that files and records and documentation was lost between the two states.
The women were picked up at the ports and driven straight to institutions.
The idea was that they should be locked up safely for rehabilitation for 2.5 years.
This is an archive recording from a priest who was personally involved in hundreds of adoptions across Southern Ireland.
The dreadful fear of these mothers were scared they'd be seen. And quite frankly, in the early days particularly, there was very little bonding between the mother and child. They wanted to get rid of the baby, as simple as that. We had to tell them, now, you understand that you won't be seeing your baby again. And there wasn't a great deal of emotion.
He also recalls conversations with priests in London and the attitude there towards pregnant Irish women.
Westminster Diocese had 500 Irish girls a year, steady, dropping their babies on their doorstep. The English priest ring me up. 2 bloody PFIs arrived on my doorstep this morning. Can you handle them? See? And another night then to me. Hi, hope you're well. I have two babies here. We want to get them adopted fast. Can you take them tomorrow morning?
Paul was one of those babies, born in Britain and brought to Ireland to be adopted by a Catholic family. At Dublin docks, he's retracing his earliest moments.
What do you know about your journey to Ireland?
I know that my mother took the 4:50 train from London Euston to Liverpool, and then she got on a ferry which came in here into Dublin Bay, my first time in Ireland at the age of 4 months. She landed there in the port there, and then she was met by an official from the adoption agency.
Paul contacted ITV News after seeing our investigation into mother and baby homes.
I've never talked about this before now. I mean, look how old I am, you know. I don't obviously have any pictures of when I was a baby.
In 1963, he was born in a Catholic-run mother and baby institution in London. His mother was unmarried and pressured to return to Ireland, where Paul was adopted under a secretive regime.
You have 2 birth certificates.
Yeah.
Paul is a British citizen, but was issued with an Irish birth certificate.
It indicates here that the birth took place in Dublin. I wasn't born in Dublin, I was born in London. This was given to adoptees and to maintain that absolute bar from knowing anything about your previous life.
After years in foster care, he was adopted at the age of 3.
I was in very bad condition then, that my health was poor, my teeth were rotting. It doesn't seem to have been easy.
He believes British Catholic charities put his faith before his physical health.
When I was in London, I was in the hands of the Crusade of Rescue. And when they're talking about rescue, they're talking about rescuing Catholic babies from non-Catholic families. And that was the priority that they started with. There's a certain amount of playing God here, remember, because you are creating families.
Over the last 12 months, I've travelled to all corners of the UK and now Ireland, investigating the forced adoption scandal. Outside one of Ireland's former Magdalen laundries, I've come to meet an academic who spent a decade researching these cruel practices.
Thousands of women would have passed through institutions like these right across Ireland.
New analysis by ITV News has found that an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 single Irish women and babies were deported from Britain.
What role did the Catholic Church play in all of this?
They would have preferred to see Catholic Irish children in institutions, sometimes long-term, rather than placed with Protestant families or families of another faith.
And in their words, they were rescuing these children.
Exactly. They wanted to save the souls of the Catholic children.
And were the British state directly involved in all of this?
Yes. The British state were really concerned with the cost of the women and children to the institutions and to the taxpayers' money. They wanted the Irish state to pay 50% of the repatriation costs. This included children who were born in the UK, who were British citizens.
What's really struck me from the conversations I've had with survivors here in Ireland and also back in the UK is that even though this happened so many decades ago, the women remember every last detail as though it was yesterday, because that moment, that event, changed the course of their lives. And the pain, the trauma that they endured has in some cases actually been passed down the generations. Back in the UK, Fiona is the 3rd generation of the Cahill family affected by what happened decades before.
And this is the only photo of them together?
It is, yeah, and we don't know who took it.
Her mother Maria was born in London in the 50s, but as a baby she was sent to one of Ireland's most notorious institutions with her mother Philomena, who was unmarried. She was later adopted by a woman she described as emotionally abusive.
It was difficult, and often she'd have PTSD type symptoms, you know, she'd struggle.
This is 40 years of searching for answers.
Yeah, this is all decades of work.
Maria was in her 40s when she first found out that she was a British citizen. She died last year, still searching for the truth.
What would just an embrace from her own mother have meant to her?
But it was, yeah, it would have meant the world. I think it would have been so healing for her, and perhaps for me as well, because I tried to fill that gap, you know, as a little girl. I'm trying to mother my own mum and give her what she needed, because I just wanted her to feel happy and to feel loved and safe.
Fiona now feels it's her duty to get justice for her mother and grandmother.
There's a lot of sadness. I mean, for me personally, it's just a kind of darkness. It's like a dark corner that never quite goes away. And the only thing you can do is to keep shining a light into that and to keep saying, look, this happened. This needs to be acknowledged that it happened. And then we need to do the things we can do to help those of us still living with that now.
I apologise for the profound generational wrong visited upon Irish mothers and their children.
Back in 2021, the Irish government issued a formal state apology and a compensation scheme followed. But many of those who were deported from Britain to Ireland aren't eligible because they spent less than 6 months in institutions, something I put to the Children's Minister.
Are you going to do more to kind of address the harm that that's caused, because many of those people aren't eligible for any compensation?
No scheme, no words will be perfect and will ever be in a position to wipe away the trauma, the injustice that was suffered. Absolutely nothing. But it is important that we would do as much as we can in the interim. You know, we will review the process, we will see what's happening.
Meanwhile, the UK government has described what happened as abhorrent and said it's engaging with those affected to provide support. But there's still been no apology and no redress. Survivors believe these forced repatriations are a part of history that's been swept away, hidden.
I have finally reached a place of peace, a place where I have put together some of the missing pieces of the jigsaw in my identity.
Paul did eventually reunite with his birth mother, but the man he thought was his father died just weeks before they were due to meet.
It's my little sheltered haven.
To this day, Terri still gets flashbacks.
What do you think the lasting impact has been?
You learn to cope with being fractured or shattered. My heart was shattered.
After years of silence, more survivors are now speaking out about this dreadful period in history that casts a long shadow over so many families. Sarah Corker, ITV News in Dublin.